or it's just fucked that we don't have. It's not important enough to people that this isn't in books. That it's, I've got that book with Tony talking about. For fuck's sake.
Killa Kela podcast. KillaKelaOfficial.com. 101.4 FM, 24 hours a day, all genres.
FlexFM.co.uk.
THTC, the UK's leading ethical streetwear label. Organically grown and ethically built garments from hemp, organic cotton and other sustainable materials. 2019 is their 20th anniversary year. Join me with THTC as a Killa Kela podcast sponsor celebrating music, social activism, hemp and street culture. THTC, eco-fashion redefined since 1999.
Beatbox created.
Killa Kela.
And we're here to talk about world music and street culture.
Killa Kela podcast.
Yes. Well, it's been a long time coming, hasn't it?
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, reporting to you live and direct, central London, or as central as you should be. Any deeper, you're into unmarked terrain. But luckily you're on the outside looking in. And it's Killa Kela podcast. Big shout out to Graffiti Kings inside the place.
Whoop, whoop.
And more importantly, don't forget to subscribe, like, share. Do not sleep on repeat, do not sleep on a repeat. And guess who's inside? Another one. Producer, DJ, Scratch Pervert, and a very good friend of mine. How are you, Harry?
I'm good, thank you, my brother.
Harry Love.
Family affair.
Family affairs. And, up until recently, literally down the road, weren't you?
Yeah, man. Yeah. This is my old patch.
This is your old horn, isn't it?
This is my. I'm back in my old patch, but this is my second old patch.
You know what I love is like your hallmarks. You have been in this area for so long. They ain't nobody you don't know. It's like they all just like galvanise, and he's like, if Harry's upset, where's Harry? If Harry's cool, it's like, oh yeah, we've been with Harry. Do you know what I mean? This is just like the dynamics of this, the Harry Love Show, bro.
Yeah, it's a real. Well, it's not exactly the Harry Love Show, but it's definitely like a. I don't know. It feels like a big honour, really. Like I've gone on my travels, and it's like it's nice to come to an area where you know all the people. It's like the beginning of Cheers. Everybody knows your name. But it's good. It's a good feeling.
Don't get many of them in London, do you? Really?
Well, I mean, it's lucky. I put the perspective on it and thought, really, it's a big city on the planet, and like to actually have a pretty good scope of the city. I know a lot of people in a lot of places, and it's just it's a real lucky privilege, really. As a Londoner, it's a good feeling at this age.
At this age,
Yeah.
Let's not. We're not going to beat around the bush here. I mean, you've travelled the world, and we're going to get into a lot of this, okay? There's a lot of people that you know that I'm just like, yo, they talk about you like you've been together since like you could be in another city, you could be in New York, and people know who Harry Love is. That shit just...
Yeah, that spaced me out when I went California, and it was like...
Yeah. Your throne was waiting for you.
I just had people that were like, yo, Harry's in town, like, yo, and yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely, that is definitely the case, and it's again, it's another real privilege, but it's also a result of doing what I did, just being a kid, like, it kind of left to his own devices, and my devices ended up being the record shop, and everything spanned from there, really.
I think people, they don't appreciate what maybe the record store was back then, and something that Tony said that resonated when he was talking about Deal Real, which is obviously where you were residing a lot of
I like
times.
what Tony said about Deal Real. Yeah, go on.
Good, yeah.
What were you going to say?
It's just the idea that became the social parameters. That was the thing. Absolutely. And to own or to own or be in that shop, that was like being a skateboarder in a half pipe. You owned that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely. I agree with what Tony said. Like, when he was clarifying that the history started there, and it's an important. I've always put it down to that shop pretty much being the sort of sole catalyst of. That's where all my relationships with everyone really kind of started. I mean, growing up in Portobello, I had a lot of induction into just entertainment. There's a lot of
Scenes.
scenes. There's
you
stuff
always
going on
crossing with-
around me.
I've always seen you crossing with different people, if it's Shola or, Bashi. Like, these people,
Yeah.
they're just like, they're from different walks.
Yeah, well, it's like, well, the record shop is like, on topic of the record shop, there's just nothing like that anymore, and that's what I would attribute to the biggest change in the music industry. And I don't say that just when I say industry, I usually refer to the industry, but I mean it in terms of just all music consumption and how we would get our news. I mean, we're now however many years into the social media sort of lifestyle, so that's how most people get their media, consume, and it's changed the dynamics, changed the whole thing. And like, I remember when MySpace popped up, it was the first time on the internet where it actually, like, the internet was full of information, but you had to know which website you were looking for to go to find that information that you wanted. And if you didn't know it existed, you just wouldn't. It'd be like trying to find an address of a place you didn't know.
It's a dark hole, and you just
Yeah.
yeah.
So MySpace kind of was the first place where you saw, you had, you knew you could find. It was a central convening point, and that it all changed from that point. But what was interesting was that was the first time I'd seen since the record shop days of like a gathering of like-minded people. And before that, there was that weird era between like early 2000s, with the beginning of download stuff and decline in music sales, and then just obviously the way anyone was able to get their music completely changed, and so it really was a fundamental shift in everything. Like, as well, say when we were doing all the early stuff, like the early records, and even when we were doing Scratch Perverts stuff, just after that whole time, we could exist off of just making a single, pressing it on vinyl, and going and tour off of a single or an EP.
Days,
you know what I mean? That was I'm looking at it now, thinking, shit, man. A lot of people, because it's just even. I was thinking about it earlier, like listening to the old stuff I was playing on Instagram and that, the old beats and stuff, and I was thinking, raw, like these are like really underground, underground hip hop tracks, yeah. And we were going out and performing them in clubs, you know what I mean, where people were like raving to Jungle and stuff next door, and we're performing shit like Strong Rhymer by Maestro and that.
It's
That's
unfathomable
like,
when you think about it. It's like that.
Compared to now, because it's just more and more focus has gone to like you've got to have club bangers and this, that, and the third, and so like anyway, so the whole change, the whole way that people convened, and hip hop in itself is kind of got like a weird cult sort of style structure where you must adhere to the rules and practices and traditions and stuff like that and respect it. I think, I don't know, I just think it's all changed drastically. Really, we've come we're in a different era, and so like anyone who knows the era will know how much it's changed. Anyone who doesn't will just have there'll be no way of recreating that vibe. It's just like there's no way of recreating, the sort of the late 80s, early 90s acid house and acid techno, the sort of ecstasy era. Yeah. There's no way of, you can get a load of people taking ecstasy, but it's not going to be the same thing as this like unleashed thing on this generation of kids who, So it's this different thing. But we're in a retro era now as well, like the whole thing's got different meaning now. It's like Back to the Future 2, man. We're actually seeing like retro cafes with people going, playing Duck Hunt and going, you mean you use your hands?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really like that.
Do you think people like that? I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that I'm the same with reggae actually to a certain degree. People think that hip hop, sonically, they can't hear the difference about what was going on back in the mid-90s to early noughties to 2010 and now. Do you think there is any do you think it's all linear to some people that it's just a
Well,
ride?
That's
It doesn't stop.
that's a good question because I look at that concept of like music. I've been looking at it recently, just thinking how antiquated and weird of a concept it is that music, the passage of time, means that music then becomes like old, therefore disposable or like perished or
Bro,
something.
that is one hell of a black hole that I just get my head into. It's like, I think all the time, like, what's the difference in the day that this video was uploaded on YouTube and they still fall on my timeline?
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, there's so many factors. Like there's us being led around by the nose by the algorithm programmers, and then there's like the stuff that there's all sorts of phenomena at play. But
Back in the day with the record stores, it was really a case where you were behind the desk and you were essentially algorithming. You know what I mean? You'd play stuff.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, you like that? Okay, we'll try this. And you'll be directing people. That was the key to a good record store.
Oh no, but I tell you what, actually, it really reminds me that atmosphere. I'm really getting a sort of flashback of the feeling of walking in that shop. There was a complete feeling like walking into that door. I know everyone who walked through those doors had that sense. It was like a sort of, you know, you weren't thinking about it, but it's just like you get that sort of almost like, you know, as you're walking in, it's like, oh, this is where the excitement lies at. And like you're saying, like to paint a picture, because we're talking about abstract things, so I suppose, you know, what I'm really interested in with this, like talking on this podcast, is to like relay information to people who, stuff that people have witnessed and they might hear and go, oh shit, I witnessed that, and I'm glad to hear someone else comment on something that I saw. I felt that too. But there's also just like people who didn't see it. So I suppose it's, if we were to like paint the picture of what it'd be like. So you'd walk in, and like my dynamic, because
Can I just tell you your dynamic?
Yeah, go on, please tell me,
bro.
yeah.
I can see you now, bro. It's
I
like
wanna hear it back,
It's like
'cause
a print in my head. It's like,
I was in my own world in them days.
dude, you're young. I remember you always standing on boxes, and you would always be by the turntables. You'd have either a woolly jumper on, or a kind of classic button-down shirt. Yeah, it'd be everywhere, and you'd just cutting the fuck out of a record.
Yeah.
And in amongst doing that, you'd ask what someone wants, and then pick it out, put it on. You know what I mean? Exchange money while scratching. Like this was you.
That's how I met Idris Elba. That's how I know Idris, is literally by doing that. It's like I didn't even really work in that shop. I just used to hang out there so much because basically that story of like when Tony was telling the story about Handspun turning into Deal Real. I mean, I was surprised he didn't go into more detail about it, because it's such a great story about how it developed. He was kind of quite blasé about some you know, but that's how I got to know them. I started bunking school when I was like 14. I was always getting kicked out of class, and I just realised after a certain amount of time in standing in the hallway, and teachers coming up and going, oh, where are you supposed to be? What have you done wrong? I was like, these fucking people don't have a clue what's going on. They just... So I just thought, let me just see what happens. You know, I started testing my boundaries, and I just bopped out the gates one day, and I was like, no one's fucking noticed.
I'm fucking
man.
gone, man.
I'm gone. Like, that's because they didn't want me. They didn't want me in the classroom. In the hallways, it's just like they didn't know what the fuck was going on. And it was a waste of my time. It was just why. I don't care if I'm 13, 14 years old. This is a waste of my time. I'm standing, looking at a wall. So fuck this, I'm out, right? And I left, and this is the funny part of the story. The first place I went to, because I didn't really know West End. I was young, I didn't really go up West End very often, right? So first place I go is HMV, the big HMV mega store on Marble Arch, right? And I'm looking in the racks and that, and I'm like, I see, I can't remember how I got chatting to him, but the security guard, like, I was looking at him and I was thinking, he looks like this guy on this UK hip-hop video magazine called Third Eye that I'd bought, right? I bought it in... It was just a video tape, but it was like interviews. It had Blade, Gunshot, and MC Mello, and...
That's the original podcast back then.
Yeah, I mean, that was like video. People making shit on videos, like, you know. That was in the days of, like, you know, Amiga magazine and stuff like that, you know? And then, so, like... What was I saying?
Well, so you got to HMV and you met the security guard.
It's security guard, and I'm like, I go up to him and I just go, excuse me, do you know where if there's any UK hip hop here? And he was like, oh yeah, what are you looking for? And I was like, Blak Twang, Gunshot, Catch 22. And he was like, and I was like, what? And he goes, I'm in Catch 22. I was like, you look like Hunt Kilberry Finn. And he was like, yeah, that's me. So Hunt Kilberry Finn was security in the shop. So when I started bunking school.
That's cold.
That's the first person who I would just used to like, go shopping there. And I knew the security wasn't going to be like an arsehole to me, and he was actually going to be cool and help me find hip-hop records. I was like, cool. And then he was, so that was one of the first people I started chatting to. In the
That's
West
crazy.
End. That was like a reward for bunking
That's
school,
Yeah.
And then, next thing...
reward, I love it.
Yeah, I mean. And then I hear Shorty and MK on Westwood one time. Must have been like April 96. They've done Mix Masters
Those
weekend.
boys have been doing stuff together for that long?
Well, that was the first time I'd heard them both together. And I think it was quite a special moment. I think it might have been, I don't know, it was the first of a few things, right? So I heard this and it was like game changer for me because it was the first time I'd heard British, anyone in the UK like doing scratching and stuff like what I was into, like Cash Money and all the people I was listening to mixtapes and stuff, And I was really looking
Can I just back up a minute? Because people are gonna. I want to know how you got into this. How did you know about UK hip hop act? How did you know about Cash Money? How did you know about Catch 22 and Gunshot? How did you know about these people? Was it your pops?
Well, my pops played a big role in. He introduced me to. I mean, my first like awareness of things like scratching and the sound of hip hop was from my dad. He used to listen to, when I was a baby, like he used to have this Grandmaster Flash album. He had the Malcolm McLaren album, Tears for Fears. So he gave me a Fisher-Price tape machine, and there was a few tapes that I just always listened to, and I was always recording on this tape machine, and that was like 84 when we were living in Fulham.
But were these artists big in your school? Was it like...
Nah, it was never... I don't know how... I was never a hip-hop head. Like, basically, it went from that, and I was like, obsessed with Michael Jackson all the way up until I was probably, like, between 8 and 10.
Yeah.
I was listening to bits of, like, James Brown and Stevie Wonder, actually, and stuff like that. I was really... My dad was making, like, African high life music. He's a blues musician, blues guitarist,
right. Yeah.
amazing musician and like songwriter and guitarist, and so that was my kind of introduction. And then like when we moved so I grew up with him experimenting with synthesizers and 4-track tape machines, and as it was the new wave, as those albums were new, and he was sort of making with his high life music, he was fusing all these different sensibilities. So he's trying to bring this African music together with Western dance and pop and stuff like that, and calypso-y sort of influenced stuff. So he was experimenting with all that sort of stuff, and I was a big fan of my dad's music even as a little kid.
Yeah.
So I used to sort of really follow him around and watch what he was doing, and any time he was away from his equipment, I'd just be fiddling with that. That was my toys as a kid. So then we moved to Portobello in like 86, 85, 86. And my parents got this cafe, which was like fucked old building. I've heard from historians in the area that it used to be just a bit of an anything goes building, like a bit of a brothel, arms house, drug den, whatever. And
Portobello was way different back then.
It was, I'm telling you, it was so rough then. And also that part past the bridge, like that was the no-go area. And that even Trevor Horn told me that when we were talking about Psalm, and he had the front line. He when he took it over, he allowed for them to just continue, like the front line being in the basement of Psalm. Thanks for Lucky Gordon and all that. That's part of the history there.
Wow.
So, and this is an important part to my history as well, because when we moved to Portobello, I was like 86. And so my parents had this building. They got it rent free for the first year. That's how fucked the place was.
Wow.
And it was filled with rats and fucking all sorts. My dad cleaned it up and got all the rats. I got a dog. We had a dog and got a cat from Battersea Dogs Home, the rat catcher from Battersea Dogs Home. That was our cat. Yeah, cleared the place, and then that business became like. I've been wondering if that was the beginning of the whole decline and downfall, because it was like my dad had this vision of buying a coffee machine, because he'd lived in Italy for a while and he loved his, his sort of Naples, living in Naples, he loved his coffee and that. So it's like, wow, like if you just have, continental breakfast and some cool music and art going on, like, cool art like this and just music that's not overbearing but just cool. And it became this really sort of popping... sensation, really. It changed the whole, like the map of the area, the landscape of the area, brought a lot of people together, and then our cafe became this sort of cool. But you get a lot of, we had all these celebrities and superstars there, and then but everyone. The whole range of people, right? Sick. It was like market traders would come and get their breakfast, and the locals, and then you'd have Van Morrison was a regular. Rick Mail is like an old friend of ours because he was a regular. I used to run up to him and go, "You're young ones, do young ones, do young ones." And
Get the fuck out!
He was a good friend of ours. Ruby Wax was a regular. Johnny Depp and Kate Moss, when they were going out, they used to come. Helena Christensen.
Like, at this point, I'm really glad we didn't bypass this part of the story.
Yeah, no, because this doesn't get covered. Like, Portobello Cafe is all fully pre-internet era, so there's no history existing out there. It's all in my mind, especially now my dad's gone, so it's like...
You've got to relay this shit.
I've got to relay this shit. He's done some really important stuff, but it's important. That's why I'm telling this, because it's very relevant to not just my development as a musician and hip-hop artist, but it's very... important for that timeline and narrative as well, as especially as someone who's like trained as a true disciple of hip hop and done my research, done my knowledge in that, and earned my props in that. I've seen lots of really interesting and historic stuff going down from that patch when we moved to Portobello.
It sounds like you were a social magnet.
Well, look, put it this way, right? When I was 5, I was like, I would have come up to like maybe 6 inches under this table, yeah? I used to bowl around the area and just go up and talk to people and this, that, and the third, right? And at that time, this is 86, 87 was when my dad set the studio up in the basement with this guy, Kevin Armstrong, who he's like a producer and session musician, really, really well established. Look him up on Discogs, and it's interesting. He's got loads of... cool shit to his discography. So he played for like David Bowie and fucking all sorts. And then my mate Cady, his dad is Roy Dodds, who was the drummer in Fairground Attraction. And that was 88. That was when I was best friends with Cady. That Perfect and all that was like out in the charts, and they were touring. So we would go watch their shows. And so I was raised, just to give one example, I was raised in an environment where it was really not unusual to see well-known entertainers and musicians. And I mean, like, at one time I walked into my dad called me from the phone in the studio downstairs, calls up to the house and goes, "Come downstairs to the basement, there's someone you might want to meet," right? This is 1988, I think it must have been. This is when they just got Akai S900 and an Atari ST in the studio. And that was kind of like the main brain of the studio, right? And they were really, trying to work out this is the new technology. And my dad took me to the side. He was like, "Right, son, you're only 7 now, but like this is going to be the shit that you got to learn this now. Like, and you're into fiddling with these music things. Learn this now, and you'll thank me in the future." There's a new program called Cubase. God, it's changed everything. And he got an Atari. So like that's kind of like the seedlings. There's obviously my dad's music and playing around with music instruments and me playing with his gear and that. And then this period where this was sort of going on around me, I was just a little kid. But at that time, when they set up that studio, one of the regular acts that was recording there, Mighty Ethnics.
Really?
Mighty Ethnics.
I remember them guys.
Some of the first British hip-hop was recorded in my basement.
And is this where you started getting an affliction to the more that more urban side the more hip hop side of, you know.
The hip hop, yeah. The idea of it being hip hop didn't settle in my mind until way later, until like the ending of primary school, going into secondary school. Thanks to my friend Aaron, who lived on Lancaster Road. Like, you could see Psalm Studios from his window, right? He lived on that bit, and so that in those days that I'm talking about, late 80s, that was still the front line. That whole bit was still.
You must have seen
the
some
West
shit
Indian
back then.
front. You just couldn't go there. Like, white people would not. That's just a no-go area, right?
Really?
And you know, police and general white people, unless you like lived there, knew someone there, or you were cool with people there, it wasn't somewhere you'd just go strolling up. Like, obviously I was a little kid, and I used to walk around, like, I used to be out on road, like, since I was a little kid, so I really know, like, how the area worked and that. But that was, so that was Aaron's place. Aaron was the one who introduced me to everything that my whole life and sensibility is about now. Like, he introduced me to hip-hop, designer jeans and designer clothes, like, he introduced me to Tribe Called Quest, Gangstar. He introduced me to turntables, Shabba Ranks, and
Because it
Ragga.
all becomes like a big merge. So it's not just UK hip hop; it's hip hop as a whole. It's the whole movement you get like injected with.
This is why when you ask the question, like when I've never to this day, I am a b-boy in that I'm a practitioner of this, you know, this I've done my training and I know I can teach on this topic, you know, but I never really. It's funny because there was a long time I used to see people and there's like a b-boy, like I said about the cult thing earlier. It's like there's this weird thing. There's certain people who, you know, you've got the four elements, right? You know, your graffiti, DJing, rapping, breakdancing, right? And those in itself kind of describe different character types. You know, you've got your graffiti artist and you've got your character type of a graffiti artist, which is often rebellious and a little bit wayward and You've got your DJ producer guys, might be a little bit geeky or, you know, just on some weird, slightly Asperger's-y, like
producers as well on that.
Producer, DJ, yeah, exactly. And then, you know, break dancers, they're more like, break dancers like kind of like graffiti artists, slightly reckless, but they're more like BMXers and stuff. They bash themselves up and shit, like skateboarders. They've got
go
that
in on themselves, and you kind of like, well,
and so
you're not even thinking about your life right now.
Yeah, so you can describe those as character types, and you can see the sort of like the circles, you know, that form around that sort of thing. And for me, I never felt like I was really fit in with. I used to be into drawing, but I never felt I could get good at graffiti. And then there was all these kids who were into graffiti, and then there was people who were into the. And I was just into recording stuff on. I was just into my weird nerdy little like entertaining myself with recording equipment most of the time, and like and so like you had these people who had everything that was associated with being a b-boy. Like they'd have all the shell toes and the kazows and the, you know, they'd have all these things, and I was like, I never experienced it like that. I didn't like hip hop for like until like I suppose like the beginning 1990, 88 De La Soul. That was the first thing that got my interest, that piqued my interest, because it was funny, you know, it had character, it had skits, silly skits. That's what we were into, like bits, you know. Oh hi, here there's a fart sound on there. Rewind it. That was kind of what it was all about. I drew some tits on there, like, you know, whatever. Like that was my kind of. And then it wasn't. I was already doing stuff. Like I was already making material and doing this stuff and learning my craft. And I didn't realize I was becoming a DJ. So like by the time I got my first bookings and stuff, I hadn't considered calling myself a DJ. And I hadn't. And by the time I was already like making tunes and putting them out there, I still didn't consider myself fully in a hip hop kid until, I don't know, it came much later. It was just like I just did it.
So maybe this is right to go back to where we started from. So I
hope I didn't tangent too far. I'm trying to really connect.
No, you were really
quite
connecting.
abstract.
You're doing great. And what's really important is we covered that So let's fast forward back into like the situation where you've come out of HMV, you've got these ideals, and you're running out of school, and you're getting to handspun.
Yeah, it's important to
Yeah.
note as well that it was like I was a disenfranchised kid.
Yeah, for real.
So
Remember, we
that
talked
was-
about this a lot in the past, bro, haven't
Yeah.
we? I mean, there's with no.
I don't want to break your train of thought, but I just wanted to note that that's part of the. It's something that's become clear to me in recent years, especially the last few years of like really analysing and assessing my life and stuff that's gone on in it.
Yeah.
Like that was the result of me being disenfranchised as a kid.
Or kind of walking out of school and
Walking out of school, not fitting, like the term white privilege has always been a prickly one for me, because it's like I grew up in a space, time and place that was, there certainly wasn't as simple as that, and like so. The assumption that things went swimmingly well for me just because I was a slightly paler shade than others, it wasn't. That's not true, and that is actually partly fed into the failings that left me just roaming the streets. I was roaming the streets since a small child. That's not all the fault of the schooling thing, but I was getting kicked out all the time, and in the night time, what I'd do is I'd learn to, I'd be going practicing, learning DJing and stuff. So by the time I'd practiced on Aaron's decks so much that he just got fed up and was like, oh, get your own decks or whatever. So I was like, oh, fair enough, actually. And then one of the guys working in the cafe, this Irish guy called Luke, God, I'd love to track him down. He won't be watching, but...
Luke, come on, man.
Luke, man. Come on, Luke from Portobello
your
Cafe.
boy.
Luke had turntables. So my first time using Technics was 93 Carnival. He brought his decks in, and actually it's the only time I've ever DJ'd at Carnival, weirdly enough.
Really?
Considering
What?
I've lived in Ladbroke Grove for like
way.
30 odd years. I've never fucking done
That
an
is like
official-
hard to imagine.
And whoever's like booking people that...
Yeah, legacy holder here, baby.
Yeah,
Come on.
You fucking forgot someone, didn't you? But what was I saying? I often.
You're for a tangent. He taught you how to use the decks.
So he didn't. He brought in the decks and they set them up for that carnival. They took the windows out, and it was the only time we had a proper like. So I DJ'd for the first time on Technics to the public. It was like, go and get your records and play a set. So I was like, played a little set. Well, it wasn't a proper set, it was just playing some tunes. But that was my first time using Technics, and then he couldn't be bothered to take his decks home, so he was like, look, I'm going to leave them with you. If you break them, I'm going to break you. I'll break your fucking legs if you break these turntables, but I'm going to leave them with you. I'm going to come back in a week and see what you've done. So I went to fucking town, right? And he comes back a week later and he goes, "Go and show me what you got." And I only had about like 5 records or something. And I had like...
How old were you at this time? How old were you, roughly?
I would have been... 93, I would have been 12. 93, I would have
What
been
the
11
fuck?
going on 12.
What the fuck? Carry on.
My birthday's in October, so 11 going on 12. He comes and he's like, "Go on, show me what..." So I just did what I was doing all week, which was... I think what I was doing is... I was copying the scratches off of my favourite tunes, and my favourite tune at that time was Chief Rocker.
Big tune.
So I was like, and I had the record of the other Lords of the Underground tune, Check It, which is what he's cutting up on the hook. Raw Chief Rocker #1. So I was like, my way of practicing was just to copy these scratches over and over and over again.
That reflected what you'd heard on the record before.
Yeah, because I wasn't thinking I want to be a DJ or anything. I want to do that. Yeah. And my dad even said, actually, he remembers when he went and rented Juice for me, because I couldn't rent, I wasn't old enough. He went and got it, and he always said that he remembered me watching it like sat in front of the TV, and then at the moment when it was like the DJ battle or whatever, he goes, "I was in a trance. I just turned around and I pointed to the screen, looked at him and went, 'That's what I'm gonna do.' Or that's what I want to be, or whatever." And then I just looked back at the screen. He was just like, I knew from that, the way your eyes were, he was like, I knew
that is so sick.
So
Wow.
So the guy had left his decks at the house. He come back and he goes, "Go and show me what you got." And so I did this, just copying the Chief Rocker scratches or whatever. And he was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And he goes, I tell you what, mate. You need to get some decks, man. You need to take this serious. Like, you've got talent. Like, he goes, if your parents don't get you decks, they're cunts.
Mm.
He goes, they've got that fucking business. They can afford it. Da, da, da. It's like, I don't think they could really afford it, but he was just like, you've got to get him. And then, and from that moment, I was just, that was it. I just kept
Young
saying,
prodigy,
please. And obviously, it was like it was a few years, and God bless my dad, man. He got me by hook or crook.
You know the big dream of like having a set just waiting there with fucking bows.
Love that, man. Yeah,
It didn't happen.
no, but in I didn't get that. But what I did have was a dad who would do fucking anything to get his hand. He was so invested in whatever I was invested and interested in that it took me. He's such a pro at doing it that I didn't realize until years later. Fucking hell! Like I was just in my own world, and whatever I'd be into, the moment I'd be like gushing about it, bubbling about, this thing and blah blah blah. My dad would hear it all, and he wouldn't even necessarily give it away that he was like that interested. But clearly, he would go away and he would be thinking about this thing, and he would find ways of embellishing, providing some tools for me to develop those skills. And that, luckily, because we were cut from the same cloth, peas in the pod, it just so happened that my passion was the same sort of thing he was into. I was very much just a sort of Xerox of him. So it worked out well, but it wasn't like it weren't no silver spoon shit. And especially like there's the other interesting dynamic of the fact that it wasn't a white man's sport, particularly like being a hip hop artist at that time, and especially just like there's these different dynamics that haven't necessarily ever been factored into this journey or this historical context. So a lot of it's come from my own self-reflection, but and it's not just important to my story. I've been actually like you said, you see me in all sorts of weird different places, connected to like different people.
But let's just get back to the record store, because this is this is a great moment, because now we're in this spot where you've got your turntables, you're in motion, you got your records, you've got an idea of where you're going with this thing, and then you buck with Tony and Pete. Was it Handspun first?
Well, okay, I have to shout out Mr. RG and DJ Cuckoo, because the next step is just in 95, on my birthday, October 95.
How old are you?
My 14th birthday.
So you're still in early
just
teens,
before we sold that place, just before we moved. This is that last birthday there. So I was already into my scratching and stuff. Verb T was living across the road from me. Had moved in like 1991, I think.
Shout out Verb T.
Verb T, my brother. I love you, man. I really, really fucking love that guy.
Yeah, you got it.
And I'm so proud that he's he's earned his status of,
damn
being a
right,
master. Bro. It's just because I was always gunning for that, and like I'm just so glad to see that he's earned it. And he's the first fucking guy with a primo beat, and I always said it's gonna be one of the guys out of my crew will be the first one with the primo beat, and he fucking done it.
That's fire.
He's
Come
done
on.
it. He done it. We done it.
Did it.
It's important to say things. I've got to say that, like, all this waffle. It's important. I hope you can just get that from this story. Is like, you might not necessarily know why you're driven to do something, but God damn it, if you've got a drive to do it, fucking, if you really mean it, if you're not willing to throw shit away to pursue that thing and not fucking have that social occasion, or not get that piece of pussy, and not fucking be cool in this, not be with the fucking times or whatever. All these things, it comes from being really focused on on something that you want. And I didn't necessarily know how lucky I was. it was later on in life that people started going, wow, you're really lucky that you like know what you're into. Like, I still don't know what I'm about. Or you know, it's like, right, I could not fathom it. But
Yeah, it's mad when people say that, isn't it?
it's
It's
important.
Still,
It's
even
an
now,
important.
man.
It's an important thing because there's things I've said at the time. I knew, no, we're gonna get across if we stick to our guns. We'll get across. And like those who didn't believe in it, yeah, they can piss and moan about it now, but they fell by the wayside because they weren't hard body. They didn't put in that graft. Like, you know, skinny little fucking me. That's one thing that anyone will say. Like, you know what? I've seen that kid graft in, and he's willing to. He'll
100%.
throw down with the fucking big boys.
Yeah, it's right, it's right.
He will throw
You
down
give
with
it-
the
yeah,
big boys.
100%,
And I didn't know. Like, I
100%.
thought I was, you know, like I had confidence issues, or you know, because just all sorts of reasons. You know, like all sorts. I didn't really believe in myself in the same way. In that way, in that sort of egotistical way, but I believed in what I didn't even need to think about it. It hadn't been raised as a question. It was just what I was into. I wanted to make that sound.
Right.
I want your young ones do young ones. Well, I wanted to do your Tribe Called Quest do Tribe Called Quest. Your Gangstar do Gangstar.
Yeah.
I wanted that. Okay, DJ Premier turned scratching from. You know, I loved the way Maceo used to scratch on the De La Soul records, where it would just have a musical flair to it. It was like, and that's what drew my ear in. It was like, it wasn't noisy. It was now musical. You know, you could hear the musical notes in the cuts that you you know, it's just like
It's
you'd
sick.
find the pocket for everything.
Yeah, the
Maceo
tone
was
in
the
it.
first
Yeah.
DJ that made me hear scratching in a song and just be like, oh, whoa, like, what is that? Like,
The
what,
levels, yeah,
you know,
I
ow, what, ow, what, ow, what, ow, what, ow, what, ow, what. That's the simplest cut of all time.
That
but it's
and
the
a beat.
catchiest, that.
It's amazing.
Ow, what, ow, what, ow, what, ow, what. Come on, mate. And
Legendary.
that was, for me,
It's
it was just
crazy.
recreating that thing. So I just wanted to take that tangent because all this, this specific historical story is
Super
by the
important.
by. It's important to
Super
whoever
important.
cares about it or whoever might have been affected by part of the history or whatever. But for those who don't know me or know what the history is or don't care, it's inconsequential. It's still, what is consequential is that if you have that dream, if you're fucking not willing to come out a loss in order to pursue that thing
I
that you
fucking
want,
feel that
then
1000%.
fucking don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Just leave it alone for
Yeah.
someone else. Because
You got to take it. You got to take the hit.
no, you got.
gotta
That's
go.
why you get
Yeah.
people getting arsey and shirty and stuffy about traditionalist rules and stuff. Yeah, it does sound cunty and it does a bit like, come on, get off your fucking, I don't know. But at the same time, there's a reason for it. It's because a lot came before, and tides change like that.
Yeah.
And then you just end up with this wave. You see a wave of, it's just like seeing someone who doesn't really, like seeing a kid who doesn't know the value of money and they're just walking around with stuff. And it's like, you don't fucking know what it took for you to fucking be wearing those fucking Jordans and that fucking silly fucking haircut, But like, so that's kind of like, that's a bit like that with the shift in music in a sense. We can get grumpy about things as these old farts that we are, and especially because at that era when I was coming through, like the Dira era, I had murders with like me and Pogo had this fucking love-hate relationship. It's like it didn't come easy. People didn't hand me my props, and especially it was like, fuck you, white boy. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh no, oh hell no, and now I've got to really prove myself. And so it was really like fighting. It was more than being a artist.
Especially being so young as well.
More than being an artist, it was actually more, I think, a fulfillment of like, because I used to just get picked on and mugged all the time, like growing up in Ladbroke Grove. Like it was fucking rough, it didn't come easy, and so it's like I'm gonna make it. So. Because it's like, I was really looking at the real prospect of like, fuck, like, do I have to hit the roads like to fit in my ends? Like, do I have to? That's what they say about gang culture.
Like
never related
create
to
yourself
it
a
when I hear
so
people,
that you can prove your
well,
validity.
yeah, it is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah.
But that was my experience. I look at it now and contextualize it and say, well, I suppose that's like what they talk about when they talk about this gang culture and the pressure
forces
and
you
stuff.
into that direction.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. It was just distinct. It was either be a mama's boy, be one of them boys who's gonna have to have their parents come out and save their bacon, or you hit the roads and you're on your own thing, but then you've got to be in with this and that, and like, boy, you can't say nothing if you get in the thing, so it's like, and the pressure was like, I like my friends, but I'm not really about it. And then I see Juice, and it's like, isn't that just the same thing that's going on in my head?
Yeah,
and then I watched it again. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what the
yeah,
story is
dude,
about.
yeah, totally.
And I watched it again, and it's like, the story is definitely about a guy, but it's like, but I'm told people that look like me don't have these experiences. You got to look like him to have that, to valid, So it's just like weird.
That's crazy that you clocked onto that so early on.
I did, and
It's crazy.
that came. We've got a Juice. I remember
Yeah,
every time you love Juice as much as me.
Oh boy,
nearly as much
You
as
see,
me.
like, 'cause
you
you don't
didn't become a
fucking-
DJ, so you
No, I
don't
didn't,
love it
yeah, I
quite
didn't
as
really
much
catch
as
that.
me.
right. Listen, let's cut to the chase.
Yeah,
what
sorry.
happened when you got to fucking House Blood and Deal Real? Talk to me. How did you get in there?
Fuck, we got sidetracked that bad.
I know you too well.
yeah,
I
you
know
know
what's
that
going to
I'm
happen.
just gonna- yeah,
You're
yeah.
going to
No,
throw
you
the
just- you have
go,
to
man.
shepherd me,
This is a
man,
cup
yeah.
of tea and biscuit episode. I'm telling you now, man. We're coming out with some gems right
I'm
here.
guaranteeing you this is gonna be more than.
How long we known
one
each other?
episode,
We've
but-
known each other for so fucking long, bro.
Mate, it's gonna be. It's
Ridiculous.
got to be like 22
No,
years. Or
no,
something
more than
like
that. I've known. No, it's not. It's what is it? 97, 98, bro.
Yeah, that's
In the
22,
shop.
23 years.
Was it?
22, 23 years. I remember meeting you. I remember. That was when you used to hang out with Lek.
Yeah, and all the 360 physicals.
All the
Used to
360
come to
lot.
you, bro. Used to come.
You
to
guys
Deal
used to
Real.
come in a little gang. Like,
Yeah.
must have come all the way to from where?
Sussex.
Cambridge, Sussex.
Yeah, and then they would come from Reading. I'd come from Luton. They'd come from fucking. And we all just like met at Deal Real. That's how we met you.
I remember, and that was just when Tony had that was when Tony was the fizzling, fizzing sensation, just the talk of everyone was coming
Yeah.
in the record shop and just
Yeah.
And
Where's
I remember
Tony?
just weeks before that, he was down in there practicing that routine. No one knew he was a DJ. No one knew shit. No one knew nothing. So people would be walking past, coming in the shop. But the moment he won that fucking thing, all of a sudden, there's fucking crews of people coming from other cities to come and look at this guy Tony Vegas, who's got no fucking clue
This is
that
platform.
these people
This record store thing was a real
telling
thing,
you, man.
And like this,
Tony,
was
man,
you.
I wish you'd fucking tell the real story, elaborate, man, because we done some crazy fucking shit.
How did he meet you? Did he find you
in Bongos?
Yeah.
I met him the day that I was going on Westwood.
Right.
Okay, and that's why he and everyone can always say, my career did not come from the Scratch Perverts. It blew up in a huge way, but it did not come from the Scratch Perverts, because the way I met Tony was I went into Bongos. I was getting records for my Westwood set. He recommended. This is how good my memory is. I remember what he recommended. He recommended a record by a guy called Grav, that was A&R'd by DJ Newmark from Thingy, and it was all produced by Kanye West. It was Kanye West's first fucking production, and I played that on my first Westwood set.
And how did you get the Westwood set? Was this another?
I used to listen. So from hearing MK and Shorty on there, and then going and meeting them in the West End, I just used to basically, the Justice Productions, innit?
Yeah.
Like Westwood's production company was in his house, and so they'd give out the number on air, call up Justice Productions, So then I just took the number, and I clocked the same number that it was for the competition.
You found the address?
No, I just clocked that the competition number was the same number as Justice Productions. So I was like, oh, it's the same. So I just started calling up and asking this woman that answered, how do I get on the show? She's like, what do you mean, how do you get on the show? He just gets, it's like, no, but he's had Mix Masters Week. I want to get on that mix. She was like, well, he just generally asks guests that he wants on there. I was like, fuck, man. Well, how the hell do I get? And she was like, just send us a thing or whatever. So I made a tape, sent it in, and then I think I called up, or I remember speaking to him again. And by this point, I've called so many times that it was like, oh, hello, Harry.
It's the running joke in the office now. This is like,
when's that kid going to call?
Hey.
Bring, bring. Oh, hi, Harry. It's you. We were just talking about you. And I fucking sent this tape. She goes, yeah, look, we like the initial tape. Tim said, send a tape that's like an example of what you'd do for the show, and he's going to give it a listen. I'm like, fucking Tim Westwood said he's going to... So I sent another tape directly specifically for him. I can't remember what I did on the tape, but...
So you meet Tony
by this point,
in Bongos.
Oh, so I met him in Bongos looking for the records for the Westwood set. He gave me these, he recommended some stuff, whatever. I told him, oh, yeah, I'm going to be in Westwood for the first time. So that's the first time I'd had a proper conversation with Tony.
Yeah.
He was the guy skulking around in the background when I was usually being served by Cam, John Prime, Hugh.
Yeah.
Hugh and Tom are the ones that I'd always be really cool and friendly and chatty with. There was a weird dynamic of like all the record shops. There was like, funny thing was, record shops was like football teams. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I mean, like literally. Oh, what team are you with?
Yeah.
Are you with Wild Pitch? Are you with Uptown? Are you with Black Market? Are you with fucking
totally.
Bongos? Are you
100% like that.
Now, when Tony, I was hoping Tony would allude. He alluded to it. I was hoping he would elaborate a little bit on it, but he's saying, well, basically, yeah, it was like that was the one. That was the shop where you'd come and you'd have a beer.
Yeah.
You'd have a beer.
You could be there for a long time too, just staring at the wall.
That's what I did. I used to go there after school and not leave until midnight.
Yeah. And
Half
then,
12.
well, this is the thing as well, because Tony was there and he became this fixture in all the record stores he'd go to. And then as soon as the Scratch DJ thing, the ITF thing blew up.
So I met. What had happened is Handspun shut down. Tony being sacked from Bongos, which he says on the podcast, and then they were meeting every day. At, I think it was called the Coach and Horses. It was the one that was the pub next to Bongos on Great Marlborough Street.
Yeah.
White something. White Horse.
No, he was always there. There's a lot of
Horses,
people. They always
like
used to drink there. Yeah, I remember.
Well, anyway, so while I was at school, I'd been out of school for like a year and a bit.
Yeah.
I was out of school, and then I went back to school, and then this school that I was going to was in the West End. So it was just around the corner. It's right next to BBC. So it was BBC Radio 1 BBC. So I used to just walk to the record shop afterwards, and then just hang out there till the end of the day. Well, no, sorry, just before the record shop. It was when they were setting it up. So they were meeting in the pub, and it was Tony, MK, Pete, and a guy called Gary, the Cisco kid. That was the four people who pooled their money and record collections together to make Handspun. That was what they would, that's what they decided. So I was, every day after school, I'd come and meet them in this pub, and they'd be doing their,
Handspun or Deal Real?
Sorry, Deal Real. Sorry,
Yeah.
This was in the development of Deal Real. So this is them brainstorming, setting up this shop.
Yeah.
So when Tony talks about, I don't know, I just refer back to the Tony episode. He talks about it, but then he just kind of doesn't elaborate on it. And for me, that's a very crucial
moment,
crucial and poignant and very burned in my memory. And so I remember this very clearly. It comes from that, and in that time, that was when I became really close friends with Tony. And that was when I didn't know he was a DJ before that. No one knew. He didn't even fucking talk. Like, no one knew he was a DJ, right? Except for maybe the couple of guys he hung out with. But it wasn't known. He hadn't established himself as a DJ. It wasn't known that he did anything like that. And it was like, that guy talks? You know what I'm saying? That's what it was like in them days.
Really?
No one had ever really even heard. No one is in, like, anyone experiencing from the outside of his little social circuit, right? So in this time, it was like, I was having these conversations with him. And then I remember I was trying to learn to flare, and I was practicing at DJ Cuckoo's all the time. We were listening to Qbert practice tapes and shit like that. And I remember there's this breaks tape of Qbert, and I think it's Qbert and Shortcut or whatever, cutting up breaks and just doing crazy shit, like crazy cuts. And it was like, gotta learn how to flare. Like, and this was, no one knew how, you know what I mean? This wasn't a widespread thing. It was like, do you know there's like, this was before Blue Flowers. This was around the time Blue Flowers, right? And so I remember saying something about, I really fucking need to learn how to, work out how to do this flare thing. I just can't fucking... And he said, Tony, he said, he told me something, however he told me, it stuck in my mind. And I went home and I practiced on that thing that he told me, and it worked. Like, I eventually got it. But it was because he broke it down in such a way that was like...
But you didn't know he DJ'd at the time?
Didn't know he DJ'd, but so I knew... It was like conversation. We were having conversations, and this was in them days where everyone would be, like a pissing contest of like who knows more. That be, it was
competitiveness within.
They would be doing that sort of kind of cheesy, like oh no, that was actually Grandmaster Kaz who did, whatever, like that sort of thing. And I'm just a fucking kid who's like, I don't know who any of these people are. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, that's how I got to know Tony, and that's how my induction into the Deal Real thing. Because by the time Deal Real opened, I'd already made friends with Tony really well at this point, and I'd met. I think during that period of time is also when I met Primecuts around that time. Because also in '96 I'd done my first hip hop performance with JC001, and I it was at the DMC in '96, the Heats, in Subterranea, and I was the DJ. So like, no one knew who I was, and I didn't know any of these guys. But then by the time I'd started sniffing around this scene, it was certain people were like, "You're that kid I saw DJing at the DMC. You're fucking, that was sick what you done there." And I didn't know like what. First gig, I had no way of gauging any of it, but that was that time. That's how I got to know Tony. And so by the time Deal Real opened, they had this big opening day. They all, I'll never forget that fucking opening day where they were auctioned off their records. It was like every rare record you could ever think of, including like Ramel Z and fucking the first Ultramagnetics single, and I got my copy of Ain't Hard to Tell Extra P remix there. With me and Go went there together, and it was like Go bought one copy and I got the other, and then we got in some situation one day where I basically got my head kicked in, like my records fucking got jacked or whatever, and Go gave me his copy because he felt bad for me because I lost it in that incident. But so that's how I got to know, and that was like the opening of Handspun, and then. Of Deal Real, and then Primecuts. I remember him being like, that was when Scratch Perverts was forming, and I was like, I want to be, and Tony was like, look, you're going to be in the crew basically, but you have to finish your school stuff, and I think my dad had come and met them guys at some point and said something about, look, I really want my son to do his school stuff, like, it's just great that he's really wanted. Can you? And so then Tony, after that point, was like, I'm not going to allow you to do this unless you do your GCSE thing or whatever. But at that time, that was then Primecuts. He said, once you do if you do your GCSEs, I'll give you this DMC mixer. Because all I wanted was one of them DMC mixers.
So Primecuts,
gave me my first mixer.
Gave you your first mixer?
Yeah. Well, no, my first scratch mixer.
And gave you the window of like, do this and you'll receive this.
Yeah, and after that, the next year he did the same. He called me up. He got me my sponsorship with Vestax, and he then got me out in '98 or '99. I was out at Music Messe in Germany, showcasing the straight arm turntable and the 07 Pro mixer, and that was when Akai stand had the MPC 3000 as the like in a glass case. Like, look what we're bringing out next year. And it's in this I'm like, oh my! I want one of those. Like, that's before I even. Anyway,
wow.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, with the emergence of the mixer and the...
Did I cover that bit of history though?
Yeah, you covered it so
because I know
well.
it sounds like
Fucking great.
tangents, but actually,
No.
you go back through it.
Everything's
it's
suddenly all
connecting
gone
dots.
click. Yeah, everything's suddenly gone click. So that's
because I actually did do it and I actually did experience it. I'm not telling stories.
No,
you noticed that one.
Yeah.
Because when people tell stories, they
see what I'm saying.
do it in a certain way.
Yeah, no, he's just coming out. You don't make this shit up. It just this doesn't just come out of people's fucking mouths.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Right. So let's look at this. We're in this area now where you've got your mixer. You have this quote unquote notification that if you get your schooling done, you're in the Pervert'S.
And then at that exact time we end up going on our first tour together. It was me, Tony, Blak Twang, and Roots Maneuver.
Right.
And Tony and his Mrs. Sophie at the time, they put out a record by Roots Maneuver called Fever. Do you remember Fever?
Banging tune, yeah.
Do you remember how?
of course.
In them days, that was the days when the original Klashnekoff was actually fallacy. Do you remember that when everyone was chatting about fallacy? He was the same hype, the same excitement that was happening when Kalash came out. I remember being like, rah, this was what was happening with fallacy, and I always felt like fallacy. Yeah. I never got that thing from fallacy. I mean, he went away and done his thing anyway, but
But at the time,
anyway, that's that timing. Yeah. That's how my mind works. I remember a time and then I get a flood of fucking mad flashbacks. So you lead the
so you went on road with Tony and you were on tour with Blak Twang and Roots Maneuver. Right?
Oh, sorry. Actually, the reason I wanted to mention it on this podcast was because while I was watching it and Tony was talking about that, that's when we met Plus One. And so he says about he met Plus One, we met Plus One, right? And this will probably segue into the Pervert'S segment, but that was a real defining moment, and I think that was probably the moment where I kind of my relationship with Tony kind of just ended.
How long were you friends with him before that point, though?
With Tony?
Yeah.
I suppose it was only a couple of years. It was in that era,
I always saw you guys as being literally like the tag team.
Yeah, I felt like that, but
This
then
was
it
like
just
you
felt
guys
like
were-
almost like one day.
He was your product.
It went from being like brothers
Yeah.
to then just like I don't exist or some shit. And I think it kind of makes sense when I hear what he said about in the podcast. He talks about meeting Plus One. He talks about it in a very focused. It's based like tunnel vision. He talks about it as if there was nothing else happening. I mean, like I say, it's not necessarily consequential to him or not necessarily poignant in the same way it's poignant to me. But for me, that's a crucial moment because that's when I first met Plus One. That was like, at that point, I was the wonder kid. You know what I mean? I was the one that everyone was tagging all their fucking hopes and dreams on, right? And I was just trying to work out how to get into the battle mindset, how to really craft a battle DJ routine. It just really wasn't what I was driven to do. So, I just formulate those because it wasn't how my mind worked, right? We've spoken about this in the past.
Yeah.
Because even you make routines, and that was like even everyone would be sitting around talking about routines, and you would even be talking about routines, and I could see actually Lee's got more of a fucking relevant input in this conversation than I do because that's not what I do. I don't make routines. I make beats, and I it's a different.
How did it make you feel when you were in that situation and you met Plus One?
Plus One.
You automatically sensed that there was a kind of.
Well, it was immediately like threat. It was like threat, but then it was also these two guys might by that point I'd been going around expecting that there was going to be a whole country full of other kids in my position. I was just but then it's more I was traveling. I was like, no, like this. It doesn't seem to be anyone else doing this. Like, not no one else, but like that I'm crossing paths with, rubbing shoulders with. So then I suddenly meet these guys. I hear about them from Richie Rufftone. We were in his record shop. Next thing we meet him that same day. And next thing they can outcut me all sorts. I'm like, fucking what? And I'm like, I really like these guys, but then there's a whole dynamic of competition and this weird ballsiness sort of thing that backed that whole, you know, it was a lot of bravado with it. But I never had any. There was never any. I never had any question of if there was an issue between me and Neil, me and Plus One, and it was Plus One and Extra. So it was him and Brian.
That's right.
And
big up Extra as well.
Yeah, big up. I've not seen you for years, but you know, you're still family to me.
Yeah.
Because they come all the way down from Edinburgh to check me one time. I done them a exclusive for their mixtape and that, and I was just amped at the idea of anything popping up, like anything that what we were doing turning into something much like what we get off on, like buying tapes of other people going in and stuff like that. It's like, whoa, like maybe other people will buy tapes of us going in and and that'll be a thing. Like, so I never had an issue with it. But then I suppose like the way it kind of transpired. Oh, again, I've never had an issue with Neil. But it was a bit of an unfair. The whole dynamic of the way that whole the end of the Scratch Perverts, because it was swiftly preceded or followed you and Neil joining, and then within months after that was when the crew split. And then it was just like, what the fuck? Like, I don't even think I understood what was going on until to this day, like, you know, until hearing Tony talk on the podcast. I don't think I never had an answer. It was just like, this is how it is. And it was like, okay, I thought we were all like brothers and crew and like, so. Yeah.
How did it make you feel when you heard what he said on podcast? Like, I know there's probably a few like.
I messaged you, and you probably, yeah. I mean, like, it's inherently, I'm a very triggerable guy, and it's slightly triggery fucking topic, and I think how I felt, it just I mean, it's like old history to me. It's like it doesn't really have. It's not raw.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt no more.
It's not raw in that. Yeah, I've completely just. You know, it may have hurt more if I hadn't gone on to achieve my own stuff and build my own merits. Yeah, and that was what drove me, because you know, at the time it felt a bit like. I felt a little bit out of sorts in the crew anyway. I was starting to get sick of doing these gigs, what I call scranking. Did I call it scranking yesterday? Scratch wanking.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Going and doing gigs, and it's like, I'd have to be like, you know, we'd be doing a gig, and like, this is the DJ booth, yeah? And then you just see like a row of eyes and fingers like clutching onto the edge of this fucking booth, watching our fucking fingers, yeah? And it's like, dude, like, there's like girls over there dancing right now. Like, that one is...
Because you're a selector.
Just hit her fourth tequila. Go and chat to her. Don't watch my fingers, please. Like, and it was just like...
And you also, you did mention the other day as well that you were kind of, not relegated, but you felt in part... Like,
I was definitely relegated
to go
in
to
a
Europe
sense.
And having to go to Europe.
Oh,
and
yeah, no. We had to do the shitty gigs. We had to do, you know, like, the hierarchy was based on battle merits. So it's like, being that me and Renegade didn't have the merits of going out and winning competitions, it was like, well, you guys do the gigs that we can't do. So then it was like...
Which kind of made sense if you weren't recognised
sort of made sense, but then at the same time, I wasn't part of the development of the crew. Like, I was allowed to join the crew once I'd done my GCSEs, but it was like, okay, at that point, material of mine was taken by Tony and given to the rest of the crew to be used in the team routines, which they went and did in ITF and shit like that. I came up with the Bridges Over Sucker MCs thing in Scotland that day that we met Neil and that. I come up with it in the practice. I was like, I'd been working on it at home, and I said, Tony, you do this thing because I've got this idea, and I show him, and eventually he gets it right, and it's Sucker MCs. But I was like, I worked out that the drum pattern's the same on Bridges Over and Sucker MCs, and they're battle records, so we should turn it into a Sucker DJs, and then there's Dimples D, Sucker D. So I was like, how can we do this as a
team thing together?
But I wanted it to be just me and Tony, because me and Tony had been developing stuff together. But that's the day he met Neil, and from that moment, Just what just no, what didn't even occur to the guy anymore. So clearly, that was his fulfillment of the thing that he was seeking to to build. That made perfect sense. Like Neil was a far better candidate for what he was looking for. But for me personally, it kind of represented sort of, oh, I don't want that toy anymore. And I never fucking spoke to the guy ever again. And then shortly after that, I'm getting booted out of the crew. It wasn't getting booted out of the crew that was the real fuckeries. And this is what he acknowledged in the podcast. He acknowledged that it affected people, right? Because fair enough, it's your crew, it's your vision. If I don't, do things according to your vision, fair enough. I, don't necessarily have a place. But we've been touring for 3 years. I'm feeding my actual family. Like both my parents have left work. I'm feeding the family off of these checks. I turn up and do my gigs. I come to you guys and I discuss with you what my ideas are for what I think would be dope as Scratch Perverts stuff. I keep saying, hey, either can you guys help me build some battle routines, because it's not really where my head's at, or are we able to represent more than just this one scranking fucking field in DJing? Because now as an adult, like as a kid, I was, looking for validation, looking for answers, stuff like that. It wasn't, it wasn't explained to me, and plus everyone else was young. They were in the early 20s.
Yeah,
everyone was young.
Yeah, I think I touched on this with the Tony podcast. We'll have to go back to it, but I think I suggested that the broader palette of talent that was in the 8 on those final months when there was 8 of us. You had your host within me and the beatboxing that is integrated into the DJ sets. You clearly had the selector. Tony was much more of a selector kind of guy, as was Mr. Thing. But then
I already wasn't part of it by that point.
But I always saw you as more of a selector, and I saw you as a beat maker. I saw Mr. Thing as a beat maker.
Yes.
I saw Joel as a huge contributor to that thing.
Yes.
And I might add as well, like Primecuts' scratching was fucking second to none.
And he's a dab hand in the studio. He really knows
drummer
his
as well,
shit.
right?
Yeah, he knows so much more.
So
than
there was a lot more going on.
Love you, Joel.
Yeah, man. I love all of you. And this is why this
I
should be
everyone in the crew. I really, to this day, I really still love them like my brothers, man.
Yeah, for real.
I really do.
And I think this is why. This comes from the heart. I mean, like you say, you have a triggery kind of characteristic.
Yeah, but if people hear me out,
they get it.
It's not just all anger and fucking. It's actually I'm just getting passionate about stuff.
Yeah, exactly. There were so many things that were contributive to what could have been a very explosive. Could have moved further. The more it got into the scratch DJ thing, the harder it became to get out of it. And I just
and
felt
that's
like,
where I felt increasingly uncomfortable and out of sorts. And it was like. Now, to this day now, actually, when I look back at it, I'm like, fuck yeah, kid. You shouldn't be out of sorts. You got your own shit to do. Like, fucking don't ever let no one make you feel that way. Like, you ain't part of something like, fuck you. If you don't want to be part of it, fuck you.
I must also say this, though. I didn't for a second feel like...
I'm saying context of, like...
Well, yeah. So
at the time. I'm not saying it is however anyone's sticking to that or anything.
I get it.
In context.
But at the time, when... I remember us all being around. I can't remember what bar it was, but we were all sitting there at a table, all of us.
It was in the shop opposite the old Deal Real. It was in that pub in the corner. That was turned into a burrito bar. Yeah,
and I do feel like I didn't really feel like I know you were.
You were right. You said I was gutted. I was gutted.
But
I went away and cried. I was like, I felt like that was because I really felt that was my brothers. But sorry, I wanted.
No, but It was almost immediate. When I left the thing, I was like, well, I think I'm going to be all right. And I genuinely felt like, because of your age, because your beats that you were making, this was more than just a scratch thing. I thought you were going to be, which you were. You were fine. But I know that you put a lot into the people around you. Like, you're a very sociable person, and you treat, like, I've never... once I've said this to you, but I do value your intensity with me. You know what I mean? Because you really do love...
intense.
You love people. and you really invest. So I get why.
And I've shouted at you before.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not proud of it, but I've
We've had
I've shouted at you.
There's
before,
been times we
like-
haven't hung out for each other for months because we've whatever.
Yeah,
Or
but
we've
it's-
had too much of a fucking party here or something. You know, it's just all got too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so I do believe like you're forgiven for feeling a certain way because of these characteristics. But I did feel like you was going to be all right. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I can only thank them. Like, and at the time, I was like, yeah, thanks. It gives puts a battery in my back. But the thing that I was saying, one of the things that contributed to the feeling of ill will was that immediately afterwards, doing all these shows, 3 years of constant touring, barely ever being at home. Like, it's you as an artist, a musician, you want to be touring. That's it's a sign of success. But I was touring so much that I was like, I was close to tears leaving certain times because it'd just be like, I've only had 2 days to like just get home, like be in my home around my stuff, and like. Now I'm fucking back on the road. And as you spend most of the time traveling, you spend a couple of hours on stage, which is the bit you enjoy, and staying in a hotel and meeting strangers and all this, eating fucking bad food, all this sort of stuff. It's not as glamorous as it may seem. So it has its hard work element. And especially if you're not quite sure what the direction, what you're doing these things all the time, but you're not necessarily making decisions on the direction of where things are going, like that's so for me
because it was out of your. I get it. It
So
became
also-
so much out of your control that you were you kind of relieved that it kind of pulled up.
I was because I was also considering leaving. I was very close to actually saying, I'm going to leave the crew. I don't have a place in this.
I don't know where I belong.
I don't really know where I belong because I'm clearly not. I'm more into people like Cash Money and DJ Premier than I am into. I can't even think because I was into Cuba. I mean, I was into Cuba as much as any of them guys and Babu and all them lot. But it was just a particular mind state, and it was just a focus on everything. Was just focused on those 2 turntables and doing a battle routine. And as far as I was concerned, once you'd done that battle routine, I was done. It was. There's nothing. It's not.
As in it's like a lot of work for
a lot of work for
a throwaway thing.
I mean, you can say, throw away unless you win. And then you
I said
win.
that, not you. I'm just trying to create context.
It's like, exactly. In a contextual sense, like, it's just in terms of what I'm looking at, what floats my boat, and like, it just felt more and more. And then there'd be certain comments would be made. Some of them would be snide. Some of them would be, just a direct sort of like, this is what we need. You're not doing this. Shit will get off the pot sort of thing. Tony used to say occasionally something about you got this, you're getting a £500 a week mentality, meaning like, you're getting you don't really know how good you got it sort of thing. And that's probably true, but I didn't,
You're really young,
I didn't really.
bro.
I was a fucking child.
You were fucking
I was
like-
actually. They would have to
How old are you?
work out.
18. You barely got in.
They'd
the
have to
fucking
work
club.
out techers of how to get me in and working without it breaking the law, which it was breaking the law. It was fucking child labour. I was working underage, but I was doing it. I was, doing my graft. So, I was just trying to make sense of it.
And then listen, it's unheard of.
But the other thing,
that to
the
happen
thing that really
to a
hurt
kid.
was that, I'd said that it was Primecuts got me a sponsorship, and I was I had a bunch of agents and stuff. Like we all were on agencies, and then all of a sudden, like I think it was Coda or one of them agencies, they just dropped me and Kevin or any of the remaining ex-members. So that was me, Renegade, Mr. Thing, and First Rate. And it was like, it kept getting ramped up. It was like next thing, it was like, so fulfilling contracts that have already gone out, bookings. The next thing, and then I had no control. I'd tell them, don't put Scratch Perverts. I'm not Scratch Perverts anymore. But then people kept putting Scratch Perverts on there, or ex-Scratch Perverts.
Yeah.
And then I started getting complaints via like basically there's a lot of politics, and they were they got us dropped, but then it was also starting to try and get certain shows like shut down or blah blah. They've put, or there's even certain legalistic talk at one point. Someone said something about, they put on. I was like, are you fucking serious? Hold on a second, I'm still waiting for my explanation of what the fuck's gone down. Okay, it's your crew. Yeah, what? So it's my football. Boof! Kick it out the fucking playing field. There you go. You guys were all playing football a minute ago. We just spent 3 years building our way up the fucking league tables. But you know what? That's my football, so fuck you. What, you still here? What are you pissing and moaning about? What, you can't kick my fucking football about? Get your own fucking football then. That's kind of how it felt. And it was a bit like, and then it was like, they tried mugging me off a few times as well. It was people, other very well-known, reputable DJs, who I'm not going to mention their names, because I'm a fucking man, but like, people coming up to me and going, it's American DJs, going, what's the deal with, what's the beef with you guys? What do you mean, what beef? Well, I mean, like, there was the Scratch Con thing, and Tony Vegas and Primecuts are here, and then we all go, yo, there was like 8 members not long ago, like, where's all the rest of the guys? And they'd said something like, we had to get rid of a load of dead wood, or some shit like that, right? And it's like, that comes back to me via the people they've said it to. So while they're sitting there thinking that that's cool, the guys they're saying it to are thinking, man, that's some corny shit, like. And they've come and said that. I've heard this from other people who was there. And it was like, you know what, that's all of that puts a battery on my back, because and the jokest thing was that at the time, in my mentality, the jokest thing was for them to jump across to drum and bass and jungle was hilarious to me, because that's where I come from. All I was surrounded by was jungle and jungle DJs, and I had to work so hard to seek out hip-hop and find the record shops and go to... So in them days...
Because it was your age. That was your age group.
My age, yeah. But also it was happening here. There was a lot of very, very big shit. A lot of really good artists and MCs and stuff. Like Maestro used to be called BK, and he used to roll with IC3.
No way.
Bruv, this is real. Go and get Maestro on here and ask him on
Damn,
my behalf about the jungle days when he was BK.
No fucking way.
And he was one of the best fucking jungle MCs of them days. He's the only one who used to do lyrics that actually was more than bass and drum, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you came from that era.
I came from that era, so it's like raw, like. I've gone from being made fun of because I'm a bit too urban to like, everyone's jumped on this new urban flex. And that's where you guys are going. Good luck, guys. That was my mentality at the time. Like, that's how it played out from my set of eyes. Huh?
Portrayed for the time.
Portrayed,
as in they betrayed.
Betrayed.
Yeah, that's one.
I felt betrayed in the sense that I wasn't given an explanation, and then it was like, it turned to then like, oh, you see that thing you've built? Now you better not mention it, otherwise you might have legal stuff to deal with, or you're gonna have like, if this keeps happening, that's what I think. It was one of the agents had said. They've warned, if this keeps happening, you got. And I'm like, I've told the fucking people, don't put that name on my. I'm turning up, not them guys, so stop putting their fucking name on the thing. But obviously, this is how marketing works. Like, people market off of the last biggest product that they can sell.
I mean, you hear about UB40 having a bad one,
So that's, just in context of, like, I'd put in 3 years. 3 years I could have been spending establishing myself in other ways. In that time, I'd met Pete Rock and Guru and people like that off of my own. I was Ali G's DJ before, because I didn't chat patois. That was why they got the Force. But I was the DJ before the Force. That same year, all sorts. I DJ'd on All Saints tour and Run DM. You know, I was doing crazy shit. I was getting notches on the fucking belt. You know. So that was kind of my mentality a little bit. It was like, well, I've kind of spent all this time paying into this account, and now I'm like unceremoniously sacked with not even a picture of a Spitfire. Like, it's just like, don't fucking mention a Spitfire or we'll come for you. It's like, I didn't know what had happened, what had gone wrong, I knew things weren't necessarily going so swimmingly, and that might have been a sort of imminent rejig, but I didn't feel like it was carried out particularly well, and especially after the fact. And I didn't see anyone for years, so where I was hoping for some sort of explanation, none came. It took years until I eventually bumped into Joel at Fabric one time. We were doing a gig there in one room, I'm in the other, bump into, and I was like, I'm like, yeah, well, and I just said it how I was. Well, yeah, I'm a fucking grown adult male now, so I can, I don't need anyone's permission to tell me nothing, or I don't need anyone to tell me how things are running. Like, this is how this went down, and this is how I feel about it. I feel like you guys tried to mug it and try and mug me off again now. That's what I said, and he was like, I'm sorry you felt like that. That's not how it felt from my perspective. And I also realised that it was like there was miscommunication. There was different communication dynamics between like the crew was split into 3 sections of 2 who would be touring most of the time. Tony and Joel, Mark, Tony and Primecuts, First Rate and Mr. Thing, and me and Renegade. That was the typical setup. And so it just went further and further, because if you've got me and Kevin doing the shows most of the time, how are we really going to work our way back into that? We're getting further and further afield from this stuff. It kind of just feels like, just walk up further and further into that field, mate. Click, click. You know what I'm saying? Felt a little bit like that. But, I had my own shit to do.
And,
I had,
in retrospect,
got a big enough set of bollocks for myself that I didn't need to worry about it.
Right, what doesn't hurt you?
When you talk about contentious things like this, because I've been through a number of these situations, like that was the first in a succession of like me being part of a really big movement, and then it sort of ending under whatever terms. And then you're bound by a certain omerta and code of respect as well, just not being an arsehole. Like, but also I can be like, triggery and a bit arseholey and a bit, loud. So I can.
It was handled well.
I think that was discussed well. Right. I think that was discussed well because
I told you I'd guide it all right, didn't I?
Yeah, no. Like I said, there's no more suitable person to do this than you. There's no one else could really get that, and also especially because you were there, you witnessed it, you experienced it, you contributed to it, you're part of it, and you understand the language. I can talk to you about DJ battle routines, or I can talk about you finer nuances of my trade, and we're speaking the same language. But I feel it's important because, like I said, like that, the thing where I felt like I was mugged off. The other thing was that it was a Hip Hop Connection article. That we'd just done a big shoot for it and everything, and it didn't come out until after the breakup, right? And it was like, and then I just remember there was a section where it's down the side of the page, it had like each one of us, it said like, what does each, and I wasn't there for the interview, you see, it was just, I think just maybe Tony and Joel had done the interview. So we done the photo shoot in Covent Garden in some pub, but then what I wasn't asked a single question. So then when it says like, it's got a little rundown on the side of the page, each member, and everyone had a paragraph, and it's, what does each member bring to the crew? Like, what's each member's contribution? My one, youth. That's all it said. Just my only mention in the whole article. There I was, making a fucking ass of myself. That's my fault. But, making my face all up in the shit. And I was the really animated one. Everyone's like kind of normal. I'm the one like pulling funny faces in all the pictures and all that shit, right? And it only fucking attribute that I get in the entire fucking article is youth. Youth! I tell you now, mate. Like, that's fighting talk. Like, don't ever try and boil my fucking work down to some one-word answer like that without me being in the room. You know what I mean?
You think it was the reporter that said that? You thought
No, that was them who said it. That was the same
right.
fuckers who went off to ScratchCon and tried to talk shit about us. That's why I'm saying it's not unfounded for me to be like, no, fuck you. You chatted shit about me. Fair enough. You got your own crew and this, that, and the third. I'm not even arguing with that. There's no argument from me. If I had my own crew and everyone started behaving and building something that I wasn't, I would have the freedom to go. It's my crew, guys. But also, after 3 years, I wouldn't just yank the fucking carpet underneath someone. Like, that's a cunty move. And that's, I think, what Tony may have been referring to when he said there's certain things that if you make a decision based on, the outcome is good for you but not for others, then it's not necessarily the right decision. I don't know if I agree with that summary. I understand where he's coming from and I appreciate the sentiment, what he's saying, and that what it seems like he may have reflected on. It also seems a little bit like a one-directional statement, like, I'm not reaching out to anyone, or don't make a mistake of me, just because I'm saying this doesn't mean I'm reaching out to anyone. Yeah, okay, cool. Like, I'm not reaching out to you either, mate. Like, I've been continuing with my life this whole time, but once the jack is out of the box, I have to fucking say my piece. I have to say my piece. Part of it is for my own ego, but, whatever. But there's a legacy I've built. There's work I've built. And this is like we've spoken about in this podcast. It's connected to actual history in this country. Actual music history that you can't replace with something else. You can't put someone else, transplant someone into that situation. And no, that's the history of, that's what came before these set of things, which wouldn't exist had those things not come first. Had Handspun not turned into Deal Real, then become the convening spot that I went to, I wouldn't have immediately had access and relationship with the entire whole UK hip-hop scene, which then when I went to Kung Fu, and I started, I did the night with Kung Fu with them guys, and I brought all of the artists that I already knew from my previous incarnation. These things followed on to the next. And I felt, and I suppose what the palpable, like, Harry's a bit wound up today, like, that's partly to do with it. It's like, that's a recognition. It's one thing, people coming up to you and saying in a pub, like, oh, you're the reason I love hip-hop or something. That's cool. Like, that's just completely different. And it would sound disingenuous, ungrateful for me to not acknowledge those, or for it to sound like I'm talking about that.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is, like, we've built history. I've been witnessed history, and it's my absolute honor to relay that history that I just saw with my own eyes. I've got nothing, no special things to bring to the table other than being a set of eyes that saw these things happening in the time. So, and then I also saw later on a load of people who I used to look up to and think, these guys are going to teach me how it goes. And I'd sit and listen to them talking stories and and I realised these guys were just doing their dick measuring contest, and they always add a couple of inches on the measurement. It's never honest. And so meanwhile, this whole time, I've been listening to, this is the guy who we get, you've got the official version of events. Just like the official version of events is Kool Herc and Grandmaster Flash and Theodore. And there was other guys before them guys. And they did all the same shit, but they never got the fucking props. And I always had a sense, I'm not sure if I believe or go along with this whole official narrative. And, I mean, we see the official narrative. Originally, at one point in time, Sugar Hill Gang was the fucking be-all and end-all of... We owe it all to them, because if it weren't for them... Yeah, and then, eventually, the story comes out. for a while, it would have been Kaz going, fucking that guy just jacked my fucking rhymes, man. And he's going to sound like some bitter prick who hasn't got the record that Sugar Hill Gang have got. But then eventually, even Big Bang Hank has to go, yeah, no, it's true, I fucking jacked his rhymes and made millions.
So
and
it's a
toured
running
the world, and you know, I've got all these children, grandchildren, thanks because I met my wife on you know, on Florida Beach when I was performing at the, you know what I'm saying? It's like Grandmaster Kaz is still sitting. Yeah, you can go, you can make fun and rag on these guys for like, yeah, he's just bitter. But it's like, motherfucker, this guy grew up in the hood and experienced every last one of those things that made this.
So you're saying the narrative plays out in many.
The narrative plays
things.
out for me is that I'm a child of you know, that's what to this day. Aside from that, but when I speak in context and I go into a particular time, I speak in relevance to that time and context. So when I talk about Scratch Perverts thing, I don't have any feel. I have nothing but gratitude that each one of us is still on the planet here today to tell our story, to be able to potentially see each other again and hug and have a catch up or have a scratch together. I mean, I'd love to fucking see all the guys again. I'd love to have a cut with them again. I'd love to really fulfill some of the things that I felt we were marching towards. But short of that, I don't know. Like everyone's, we're talking 20 years on. Everyone's got full lives to live. No, who's on what page now? I don't know. But I love them guys. Still got the same love. I still, when I relive the moment, I still feel the same sense. Not quite the same sense. It's died down now because I achieved my own thing. But there was a lot on. You know, I can thank them for giving me the impetus, the motivation to. I could not drop that ball. If I'd have just picked that ball up and started doing kick-ups and this and that, I might have fumbled the ball enough to have not made it.
Yeah, I get you.
But because I had, oh, hell no. Now these motherfuckers, not only have I just nearly gotten on stage, I've shared a stage with Cuba and all my fucking heroes. And then now the same guys who I was sharing the stage with, they all gone, met them and gone, made me out to be some sort of shit ass. Fucking no way. And hold on a sec, I didn't want to do that scratchy wanking scranking thing. I wanted to be working with artists, which was,
and that's what
I
ended up
immediately did. I went straight and worked with stuff,
which
and
leads
British
me
hip-hop.
nicely into the Klashnekoff era, the Braintax era, well, we won't go too deep into that. But the Blak Twang era. Like,
where is he? Who? Sorry, where? What?
I don't know.
Who? Where are you? Where are you, Joe? Joey. Hey, Joey. Me. You remember me? It's Harry, the guy that you used to work with. Remember? The guy who you went off and you spent thousands and thousands of pounds of my money on your own properties in other continents across the planet, and I'm still stuck here in the fucking same hood. That guy, Braintax. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting bitter here.
Oh, that's cold.
Anyway, that prefaces the low life era.
And lastly, I'd like to get into the Blak Twang era because
I'd much rather talk about that. To be
I mean,
honest.
this goes full circle into your what became first your tour with them, your upbringing, and now you're having the opportunity to make music with them.
Twang.
Yeah, crazy.
I mean, that's family now. That's like
big up Tony, big up King
Tony,
Dan.
man. You know,
the good cream always rises to the
we've
top.
got to do an
man.
album. We've got to do an album. I've always wanted to do it, and there was a time when we should have done it. It was just like the DJ Premier and Nas album that never happened. Like that should have happened. There was a time when it could have happened and really had a sort of cultural relevance. But then at the same time, it's just like things happen how they happen. Like just because it would have been a dope album doesn't mean that the cultural or marketing relevance to allow it to be to come into fruition, which is a bit sad. It's sadder that we didn't have the facilities, tools to make that happen ourselves, and the wherewithal of the music industry. Because given that Tony, I mean, me and Tony are two people who have been immersed in the music industry before a lot of other people even considered being artists.
Oh,
in
mate,
this
you
country.
should
Like,
check out the
we've been in
podcast
there.
that we've done. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, a lot of people mentioned Tony as
No, I had Ty. I've got Ty, Rodney, and Ty, Rodney, and Tony in the room, and they're talking candidly about their histories. I can't believe some of the stuff they're saying.
Or it's just fucked that we don't have. It's not important enough to people that this isn't in books. That it's, I've got that book with Tony talking about. For fuck's sake,
Yeah.
Blak Twang of all fucking artists, like Blak Twang.
Yeah.
That guy is like, he single-handedly fucking held up that what I call the nuclear holocaust of British hip hop.
Yeah.
After gunshot,
For real?
after Ice-T's Cop Killer killed Hijack, it was like scorched earth. There was just no fucking
Well, it
nothing.
became brickcore, didn't it?
But
like a-
brickcore I had no interest in. You know, like, it's only now at this age that I give a shit about. But that whole brickcore thing, that's not a form of disrespect. That's just like my how it affected me and how it incorporated in my.
But Tony
Whatever,
did though.
but-
He held the.
He wasn't brickcore though.
No, he wasn't.
Brickcore,
He came
because
at the
I
Nas
remember
era. He came
brickcore
at
because
Nas
that was the
time
same time I
came
was
up.
DJing, the early era of this DJing with the Scratch Perverts, like DJing them tours and stuff, and playing in them clubs, like regularly playing Fabric and Turnmills and all these sorts of places, right? And across Europe, especially across Europe, and Germany, places like that, Sweden, you would get. In them days, you would get your fucking. Where is my hijack? I want to hear Bad Manning's robbing. It's like, I don't fucking have Bad Manning robbing with me today, man. Jesus. You would think this is. You get your hardcore fucking Britcore. Britcore, I would associate the word Britcore with some really strangely overzealous German Austrian fan holding like a wedge of records, expecting Comanche Sly to appear from somewhere
With a
to
Killer
sign
Instinct
them.
T-shirt or something.
Yeah, Killer Instinct, or they'd have. They were a product of a certain era.
I think they were exported that as well.
No, they were the Britcore thing. There was some sort of thing. I didn't really experience it because I was a bit too young for that era of.
I might add,
the
I had a
hijack
Killer
stuff.
Instinct T-shirt for all the obvious reasons. I had a Killer Instinct T-shirt as well. Big up Killer Instinct. I don't want to get down that road. But very popular T-shirt I had as well. And great
Anyway,
great
that was
artist.
the tangent. Let's go and
Yeah.
some
Anyway,
specifics.
yes. I mean, look, I just wanted to because obviously we're going to have to wheel up now because it's very late in the evening. We can always get into some other stuff at a later date. Now that you're back in the manor, but and busy making beats. You are busy making beats still, which I love seeing it on Instagram, man. And like, I know you dip in and out of social media at your leisure, but I'm telling you, man, it's good to see you back on.
Oh, it's just I've had real life stuff
For
happening
real.
in the last couple of years. Been very real. And I said on social media a long time ago, like once, like I don't see the two as mixing particularly well. It's different now, but like, it's kind of like being a studio gangster. Like you've either got time to be in the streets or you've got time to be in the studio. Like if you're really in the streets, you can't be talking on the mic like that because someone's going to get you from the streets. Like it's just as simple as that. Like so, it's the same sort of thing as like I don't agree with. Well, I just don't. You don't like. I don't know. In a sense, I've not been putting out records since 2007 or something like that. Was probably the last record I put out. So like, I don't, I'm not actively putting out records, and I'm not really actively DJing at the moment. So in a sense, by my own standards, I kind of shouldn't be on social media, which is partly why I came off. Another reason is because I don't have anything to offer. Like, I'm not actively. I'm not trying to be here just to be Harry Love for the sake of other people going, "Oh, you're Harry Love." It's like, no, either Harry Love has to do something, represent something.
Oh yeah, I was very much the same, to be fair.
I want the name to be synonymous with a quality in music or a result. Like, whoop, you hear that sound, that means this is going to happen next. And like, there's that, and then there's just this also the mental health aspect of just like, it's just one big fucking ego fashion show, and depending on your foibles with your grasp on your own ego, has a part to play on how social media affects you. So I find it affects me. I find myself, like, if I'm on a certain amount of time, it's usually a short time before I'm raging at someone or something daily, and it's like,
yeah, we've seen the
important.
trajectory of this podcast go through a lot, and again, it's just testament to you as a character, and also, like you say, you have no immediate reason to be on the social platforms, and the fact that you've chosen to come on my show and literally lay down your history and your opinions, your feelings, and pretty much document everything, man.
Thank you for hearing it, and
I don't think we missed too much, have we?
No, I think I'm surprised because I've done interviews in my time, and like, and it's funny because I don't do loads of interviews. I'm not big PR. I don't have a reason for PR because I don't have stuff going out all the time and stuff, so I'm not doing lots of PR. So I often mistakenly think, oh, I've told that story before. And then I remember, like, oh no, I told it like 12 years ago in some obscure magazine, like no one's heard it. Yeah. But I'm also like, I've told the same story of my dad giving me the tape machine and blah, 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 and getting into Scratch. I've told that so many times. There's other stuff that's so crucial that has never been told. And we've covered a lot of stuff very, very well.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like contentious, the Scratch Perverts thing has been contentious for a long time. And unmentioned. And I wasn't going to come out and start just talking about everything and everyone without anyone else being able to retort or whatever. It just seemed corny to me. So, like, Tony opening the channel by starting to talk about... I mean, obviously, inevitably he's going to talk about Scratch Perverts, but I'm glad that he sort of opened the topic in the way that he did.
Me too.
You asked earlier, how did I feel hearing about that? Yeah, there was certain things that are slightly triggery. There's certain things I was just like, it's more fascinating, really. It's just like, Tony's someone who doesn't really talk very often, and he was always such a massive influence to me. And then I couldn't really speak about how much of a massive influence he was on me because of this whole weird contention stuff. And then it all just got twisted up, and then just time passed, and now here we are 20 years on.
Isn't it crazy? Isn't it?
20 fucking years. I remember being out, getting pissed with you one night, falling asleep in the fucking club somewhere. You don't even remember. That's how many times we've done shit like that.
Loads of shit like that.
But yeah,
bro, legacy shit. And
there's no better person to bring it to the table, though, man. I've said it on and off camera, like,
thank you.
You've got the most, you've got the best. You're in the best position to tell this story respectfully and from a point of understanding. You do this. So when I say, I can really dig my heels in the ground and be like, well, you don't fucking understand because you don't live this life, but you do. So
we've been there.
We've been there and done it together, and I really appreciate that because you were in the crew as well. You have actual license to speak on our sort of behalves in that sense. You've brought this into action, and it's come from you having your podcast, you actually doing the podcast. Anyone can do a podcast, some microphones, some recording equipment. It's not that everyone's I mean, dude, just a side tangent, right? But it's a funny little one. Like, moving back to Portobello, I live opposite one of the most Instagrammed buildings in the whole area. Yeah, I would dare say it probably is the most Instagram building. It's unbelievable. All day, from when I wake up and make my morning coffee to when I'm making dinner, all day long, there's anywhere between 5 and 30 people.
What?
At any time of day,
wow,
queuing to take selfies on the doorstep of this building just because it's pink and white. Like, you know, it's a bunch of multicolour buildings, and this particular pink and white one. Now, for a while, when I moved there, I was like, oh, it must have been like in a music video or something. It must have been like in something. I went and asked one of them, it's such a pretty colour. It's like, whoa, like, okay, so it's got no relevance. These people just see this pretty colour. But all day long,
That's mad.
these fucking people are taking these photos, right? Can't remember why I was saying that.
I
So.
kind of get the value of what you're saying. It's more that people are so trained to just be sanitized into getting involved in things that are really of zero relevance. But when you're doing a podcast and you're getting really involved in
taking photos is the importance of taking photos.
Yeah.
These people have got the time
There
all
we
day
go.
long, spend all day. I mean, I've seen people turn up with a suitcase with lighting and they don't even knock on the door.
Oh, I see
to
what you're
ask
saying.
the people living in there, it's all right if I take some photos on your doorstep, mate. I'm going to be here for the next 3 hours, like posing like a weirdo. But
Things are a lot more easier to do nowadays. That's the point.
they're
isn't
easier
it?
to do. They're not necessarily worth doing just because they're easier to do.
Well, this entertains me. You know the play out of the whole Scratch Pervert'S dynasty. It does play out in a way that entertains me,
Historic.
and I can understand why other people. I know what other people want from it. I know what people are hoping for, and I just hope that it's in a way facilitates something in part that delivers what people are hoping for.
I would like, sorry, I elected to go on a tangent and tell a story, and then I just tangented
It's
so
all right.
hard
It's
halfway
all right.
through I
That's
didn't
all
even
good.
know where I was.
No, listen.
That's
this
what
is
I
the
do
Harry
a
Love
lot.
podcast.
This is
all
Harry
right?
Love in 2020.
This is what we get.
This is the guy you got to get used to.
This is the one, and we'll wait to see some good fucking tunes. And
But I mean, look,
you know what I mean?
you've done a great job, Lee. You know, you're building something. That's what I was saying. I was saying that that's what the tangent was. The point of it was like the effort that goes into people taking selfies all day. People go and stand on this fucking pink doorstep and they spend hours with. They don't, for what? Like, I can't even. I've tried looking for what is it like? There's 1,000 people in the time that I've lived there for the last just 3-4 months, right? Probably 1,000 people have taken photos. I can't find the hashtag. I can't find any of these photos. There's thousands of these photos being taken all day, every day. I just watch them and I think, this is everyone. Little do they all think they're being really original. They're all doing the same pose. They're all doing the same. They're wearing the same clothes and makeup and whatever, right? Same haircut, whatever it is, and they're all doing. Oh no, let's make it look like incidental. I'm gonna just pretend I'm walking down the steps like I live here. Yeah, someone did that 15 minutes ago.
It's hilarious.
Right? So the amount of effort that goes into that, it's not to belittle them too much, but you've put this effort in. Like, you know, podcasting is like, it's a really special. It's a thing of this era now. Like it's becoming very prevalent. There's very stories I always wanted to hear that I knew were going to be told, and then there's this whole new dynamic that's coming forward where it's kind of like re-establishing. You know, like Nori in his Drink Champs podcast.
It's crazy, yeah. She's crazy.
It's really realigned him. It's got him a whole sort of new audience. It's put him in a new light. It's given him. Noriega of CNN is one thing, and his importance and relevance to the entire
Yeah, I know. Crazy.
culture of hip hop is one thing. But with Drink Champs and what he's done and where it's
Change the whole game.
put him, it's changed the game. It's put him in a really good light. And what you're doing, you're in a really great position to be doing this. To be doing, you know, graffiti artists don't talk a lot. You're getting guys who come, they trust you to blur their face out. Like, that's a really important.
Yeah, man, it's what people's,
historical
you know.
document channel. Like
Super
somewhere
important.
where you see that. That's more than just some guy who, you know, does graffiti or does a bit of scratching, talking about his stuff. That's actually, you're pulling it together now, and it's important at this time.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Harry.
you, Lee.
I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
It means a lot coming from you, someone I've known for so fucking long.
Yeah, well, you know, I love you a lot.
Love you too. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, wherever you are, and I hope you're standing up ready for the ovation, Mr. DJ Harry Love. Thank you very much for passing through, brother.
Pervert'S.